Joshua Strobel. I am the communications manager for the Solus Project. And with me today is Ike, the project founder, Bewilderbeast, and our benevolent dictator, the Solus Project. Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
And with us on this Sundays with Solus, we have a very special guest, Levi, who is a patron of the project. First off, Levi, is because of people like you, we're able to do what we do and expand the repo, cover hosting, and get hardware that we need for testing and enablement. So thank you very much. It is very appreciated.
Proud to do it.
And if you're listening to this and you're not a patron, we welcome you to go over to patreon.com/Solus and support the project. As a perk, you get access to secret ISOs, and we have more information on that later, wink wink, and help support this project. You Patreon, starting with those that have supported us the longest. So today we have Levi on. So let's jump right in and talk about the changes that have happened with Solus. The most recent, probably the last couple weeks, or with some of these like the last 12 hours. Thanks, Ike. So landed in the last couple days, we have kernel 447, which is the LTS version, as well as landing the performance or perf utilities. And we have Xorg Radeon driver version 770. And some of the goodies with that is like having virtual desktops as large as 8K, although if you're rocking two 4K monitors, then I'm just uber jealous of you. And we have Mesalib, which has been rebuilt and optimized for speed, and that alone. So picture this, a single package that gives you 5 FPS more in a game. A single package. That is absolutely incredible. And speaking of those optimizations for speed, Ike has been rampaging through the repo, optimizing and modernizing Solus for 1.2. So Ike, can you talk about the modernizations of the graphics stack that have been happening this morning, as well as other PGOs or performance-guided optimizations that you have been doing?
I can indeed. Yeah, so lately we've been looking at performance of Solus, and later on we'll get into the exact reasons why we're so concerned about getting performance in now. But basically, we've got a lot of packages there that are kind of performance critical. If it comes down to simple communications that are happening all the time between your client and the display server, you kind of want that to happen as quick as possible. The TLDR version of this is when you compile something, the compiler does a lot of guessing, trying to optimize what comes out at the other end. Now, usually it's pretty good about it, but sometimes it's nice to give it a bit of help. So we use what's called profile-guided optimization. So you've already got a workload, and using the data gathered from that, the compiler has a better idea of what the code actually does. So instead of guessing as much, it actually has real data to go on. Now, the result of that is the binaries themselves are enhanced, or any libraries coming out of it, and we do see performance gains. So what I've been doing in the Solus repo recently, some things are now built with profile-guided optimization. So we've seen things like XZ and ZLib. These are critical components that are used throughout the stack, basically by everything. So libxml2 is kind of where we started off with this. That's now using profile-guided optimization, and that's seen some huge performance increases. Like we've got between 20 and 40% in certain cases increase in throughput, which is kind of impressive. So now we've taken that to the next level, and we're doing that throughout the repos. So as an example, Mesa, we've rebuilt that with certain optimizations now, and as I said, we've done some Pharonics testing before and after. And just that one little change in Mesalib, as you say, like we got an extra 5 FPS, and that's on my Intel NUC machine with Broadwell. So if anyone's interested, that's Iris 6100 graphics.
Right, and we'll have the open benchmarking stats in the preceding YouTube video. So
yeah,
that's absolutely insane. So besides all these graphics improvements and XZ and libxml2, are there any other targets for optimizations that you're planning on doing?
So today I've basically been doing the the entirety of the Xorg libraries,
Right.
which is then going to be, which has been fun. I mean, that's been going on now for the last few hours, as you've seen yourself. So
Yeah.
all of the Xorg libraries have been done. We're upgrading to Xorg 1.18.3 today, which I had built in before we started the Hangout. So that's going to bring in some DRI improvements, well, DRI free for the Intel and Radeon drivers, some effects for the Nova driver as well. What that basically means is, yet again, even more performance. But along with that change, so in tandem with the 1.18 bringing a lot of bug fixes, we're optimizing basically all of the libraries involved in that display stack,
Right.
which is going to mean basically unbeatable graphics performance on Solus, which is kind of what we're going for here. So all of the Steam guys, I imagine they're going to be very, very happy because their games have won really, really good. Anyone who watches their HTML5 videos through the likes of Firefox is also going to be very, very happy with that. Speaking of Firefox itself, soon we're going to be switching to a profile-guided optimization build of Firefox, which, as I've said before, with profile-guided optimization, you collect data on how this thing really works, and then the compiler knows actually what it's doing and how to optimize it. So with that, we'll see anywhere between 10 and 20% increase in the performance of our Firefox build, which would be very, very nice.
That would be very nice. And while most of us do run pretty powerful hardware, I think it's important to note that these optimizations don't just affect the high end. In fact, I would say that you have been largely inspired to do all these optimizations because you recently had the opportunity to purchase a laptop that is more in tune with what the average consumer would purchase. So how has your experience been with this consumer laptop so far? Any hiccups that you've had, and what sort of hardware does it have?
Yeah, so I mean, to start with the hardware that this thing has, um, so I mean, to put it in context, my main development rig, the one that I'm currently on now, as we're having this conversation, I mean, that's an Intel NUC, but it's like 3.1 gigahertz quad core goes up to 3.4 gigahertz, 16 gigs of RAM, and 128 gig SSD. By any description, is a beast. Man,
Right.
I really like this laptop. The problem is not everybody has those, and the people who are going to be using Solus, they're certainly not going to be using these high-powered NUCs. So I got to thinking about consumer-grade machines. The typical off-the-shelf stuff that everybody else has, and what our users are going to have. So the one that I got is quite a step down from my main machine. A whopping 2 gigs of RAM.
Oh,
Yeah, so I got from 16 gigs of RAM down to 2 gigs. It's Intel Celeron with Bay Trail
oh
graphics,
no.
a 500 gig hard disk drive,
Okay, that's not too bad.
and a 14-inch screen, 1366 by 768 resolution.
Now you know how I
So
feel.
yeah, so I mean this laptop is 278 euros. So it's just under that magical 300 figure. And it's technically a little bit below what everyone else has on the market because typically you see 4 gigs of RAM and
Right.
like the 500 gig hard disk drive. So I have that now, and I want to know how Solus is for everybody else. It's fine and dandy on my machine, but how is it on the other side of the park? So I got Solus set up on it after spending 15 hours waiting for Windows 8.1 to update. Because not only am I putting Solus on it, I'm going to put myself through the problems everybody else has, like dual booting and accessing your local Windows installation. So I'm putting myself through the pain that everybody else does, much like when I bought that lovely, lovely HP printer. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, I still get nightmares over that guy. So, I mean, other people might look at it and say, yeah, this boots faster on this machine than other distros, which, to be fair, on that system, Solus is now booting around 15 seconds on the hard drive, which is probably better than or equivalent to a lot of the other Linux distributions out there, and certainly faster than Windows. However, to me, and, like the project in general, we know we can do better. We know we can do better than that. Um, just by removing some of the stupid, we can get, and there is bits of stupid, we can get that down to around 7 seconds on that laptop boot time. But we also want to optimize update times because you don't want to be spending all your time updating. You got to think, people are using Wi-Fi, they haven't got the best connections, or they got data caps. So all of these little aspects are now coming into play. So as you said about the optimizations we're now making throughout the stack, if they're making these significant changes already on Minook, which is an overpowered man killer, once you get them on that little Dell laptop, there you really, really begin to appreciate the optimizations because you're actually squeezing more juice out of the hardware you've paid for. So that's kind of what we're going to do, Solus. The hardware you've got, you're now going to be able to use it and use it to the best of our ability.
I would almost say maybe you agree or disagree with this, but your laptop seems more in line with like what modern Chromebooks currently ship with. Would
Yeah,
you
I
would you
mean,
say that's a fair assessment?
I think close. I'd say it's a little bit weaker. I mean, in comparison with I guess with some of the higher end ARM laptops, it's probably around that kind of spec. It's not the most powerful of the guys, but it's fairly typical for what you get. When you really consider the specs and then consider the fact that it's Bay Trail graphics, and then really look at the machine, you swiftly realize that it's a tablet that just spawned a keyboard. You
Right.
know, like it's literally a tablet inside, but it's in the form of a laptop. Has all the guts of a tablet, even down to the OEM setup.
So, are you still looking for a laptop with hybrid graphics, or is that sort of like on the side? Because I know you had talked about that a few weeks ago, or I should
Yeah,
say.
I mean, I've not really found a lot to go on online. I found some things, but if I buy one of these laptops, let's be straight. I am not a gamer, so I'm not really going to get a use out of it. I mean, yourself and Justin know that me and games, it just ain't happening. So I'm not prepared really to go out and spend over €1,000 on a laptop, which is about all I'm finding now because the second-hand ones on eBay and stuff, they are just demoralized at this point. Like you couldn't boot this with Jesus stood behind you. So I don't want one of those. All I want is, some second-hand one that's going to last a couple of weeks. That's kind of what I'm going for. If I
Right.
find one, then I find one. But it's not something I want to invest a lot of money in because it's not something I want.
So going back to all the optimizations that you have done and therefore all the packaging that you have had to do and tweaks to packages, a lot of that has been made easier by, I would say, almost a complete rewrite of Y package, which is our build tool. And you have integrated into that special features that have made implementing multi-lib stuff easier. Do you want to talk a bit about that?
Yeah, so the first Y package grew organically.
Right.
I think that's the politest way of putting it. I mean, it started out as a concept and it wasn't the best code base, so rewrote the whole thing, and now it's a beast. So what we used to do when we was building these packages before, like Y package would basically translate all this stuff and pass it off to EO package to do the final steps. Doing so, we lost a little bit of flexibility. So now we have the new Y package, which, by the way, has colors. That is the sign of a great tool. It has colors. You just can't argue with that logic. I mean, look
Exactly.
at LS, right? There you
Yeah,
go.
LS has colors, and LS is amazing.
Exactly.
Correlation equals
What are you going to use
causation.
instead of LS? You're not. What are you going to use instead of white package? You're not. Right? That's that's logic you just can't dispute, right? Moving on. So while I was doing this, we have certain rules that we apply to all of our packages in Solus. Um, so what Y package does that for us. Instead of having to be bogged down with the details and the policies of how packages should be put together, like you would in a traditional distribution, we decided these are a set of rules. This is what a package looks like, and these are where files go. This is how dependencies look between them, and you know, Y package will then spit out the appropriate packages. It does the complicated part for you. You just give it a bit of information and you say, this thing is called libx11, it has these build dependencies, and this is how I build it. That's kind of what you do. And then, boom, it spits them out. So, taking that a little bit further, we've we've now integrated. We call it Emul32, which basically means to create a 32-bit build on a 64-bit system. The reason we need those 32-bit libs is for things like Skype, TeamViewer, Steam, all these guys who didn't get the memo that 64-bit is actually a thing for the last few years. But because of that, we do build 32-bit libraries. So now we've made it a hell of a lot easier. For most packages now, where you have your normal dependencies, you can list 32-bit dependencies as well. And all of these resolve themselves very, very, very easily. And we build these in separate routes, so they don't conflict with each other. So using the libx11 example, we then magically gain this libx11 32-bit and libx11 32-bit devel. It does all the hard work for us, so we don't have to sit there and say, how do I cross-compile this thing?
Right. We don't have to cross-compile. We don't have to split the packages up magically and be like, okay, this stuff is 32-bit specific. This stuff is 32-bit.
These files go in there. That depends on that thing there. How does it all work together? Where do I put the package config files? Nobody has time for that. That's not why we're building Solus. Packaging is just gift wrap. This is just things we're deploying. Right. What we care about, we've always said it, we care about the build side of it so that we deliver them in the best way possible. That does not mean sitting there going over the fine details of them. We have policies, we implement them. So now we basically just switch on a flag that says, yep, I want an Emul32 build of that. And in 99.9999% of cases, don't quote me on that figure because, yeah. But in the majority of cases, I don't do statistics. But in the majority of cases, that's just going to result in you having what was originally your library package. Bam, you now have a 32-bit version as well. And I've been doing that all morning with the libx11 stuff and all these random libraries you wouldn't even know existed, but apparently you need them.
Yeah, apparently you need some for Skype, some for TeamViewer, some for Wine.
Exactly. So now, where we have these libraries that already exist, it's like, oh, well, we need a 32-bit one. Okay. Bam, I've just published a 32-bit one.
Right, I mean, since you're going through and optimizing basically, you updated and optimized basically every package that has the letter X in it, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, so what I basically did is I looked at all the packages in the repo, and then I did a match on every one of them that I knew came from the Xorg servers. That was the first bit of trick in building my work list today. So I went through them, rebuilt them. A lot of them have now been optimized for speed, with vectorization improvements, is all this stuff. So when you're compiling packages in Solus, by default we compile it with the optimization level 02, well 02. The ones that we optimize for speed, we pass extra flags with them. So we say they're O3, tree vectorization. There's all these little things. I haven't even got the flags in front of me, but they're good, trust me. So a lot of the packages we did this morning, they've all been now optimized for speed. So we have that little bit of boost out of them. A couple of them now, profile-guided optimization. So even more goodness. Every one of those X libraries now has a 32-bit counterpart as well. So if anyone's waiting now on the better Skype stuff,
Skype isn't really any better, but
it will actually now be able to start, right? So we're landing all of the 32-bit libraries, yeah, and we've made it. As I said, we've made it a lot easier to actually build them. So in terms of Skype, TeamViewer, Wine, those things will all be able to come. And even better than that, the fact that we've made Emul32 and optimization so easy. All of our 64-bit and 32-bit libraries, they carry the same optimizations. This is the key difference. So we don't just have these junk 32-bit libraries that nobody cares about because we have to package them for Steam or whatever. So all the libraries that Steam's going to need for its runtime when we replace it, they're all built with exactly the same optimizations as the 32-bit ones. Which means when we have our Steam runtime, your games will run better on Solus than they will on any other distro or other operating systems.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, which I think is something people are going to be slightly okay with.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure people are going to be okay with their games running better under an operating system, even though it came a little bit later. What would you rather have? Maybe 30 FPS and get something right on schedule, or have 50 FPS in a game or something and have to wait a bit?
Yeah,
I would choose the latter.
Take the 50 FPS.
Yeah. So what other stuff needs to be worked on in order to enable Steam and Skype? I think Skype has it needs Qt. a 32-bit version of Qt or something?
Yeah, to be honest, Skype is slightly lower down my list, just for the fact that I don't have a Skype account at the moment. I'd have to set it up, and Steam is the one that people are really crying for at the moment.
Right.
Everything we have to do for Steam will help Skype, though. There's no two ways about that. So in terms of what's left now for Steam, I mean, so when you run Steam on Solus at the moment, I mean, it looks ugly, right? You know the menu up in the top right corner in the tray,
Hmm.
and you right click and you get that ugly, ugly menu. That's because it's not using RGTK. It's using its own GTK. Like, it uses all of its own libraries, because that's apparently how you ship software these days. Um, Not that I'm saying you're doing things wrong, Valve, but seriously. Anyway, moving on. I'm totally fine with it. So by the end of the day, I intend to have a 32-bit version of GTK2 out, so that Steam will then be using our GTK. It'll be integrating with the desktop using our theming, and looking less like a dead fish. Um, so that stuff will come in, and then I'll have most of the libraries in place to replace the runtime as well. Which
That's
means,
fantastic.
yeah, so they'll be using our font configurations, they'll be using our optimizations, which is going to be, a hell of a lot better. And the best thing that comes about when we completely replace the runtime is nobody will have to do any hacks to get Steam working. Like,
You will
you'll be
no
able to
longer
open
have
it
to
from the
do
menu.
right. You'll no longer have to do an LD preload, lib standard C++.so.6, I think is what it is.
Actually, I don't have to do that one. I've got Intel.
Oh, oh, ha ha ha. Lucky you.
I know. But yeah, like within the next couple of days, that stuff will all be done. There's really not a lot to be done there.
Right. And all this is going to culminate in one, frankly, badass, if I do say so myself, badass Solus 1.2. And
Yeah.
I believe, Ike, you actually have some other news regarding 1.2 about it.
Yeah, so for those who don't know the release schedule, which is mainly me, at this point,
He
I'm
didn't get the memo last time.
yeah, I've started to learn it. Right, we have a 1.2 in May, so they've told me. Like, I'm actually in the loop this time. So we're gonna have another ISO go out later on this week. What we initially do is we release an ISO out to our Patreon supporters. Guys supporting the project.
Like Levi.
Yeah, like Levi here, right?
Yep.
So they get quick access to it. It's kind of a two-way relationship, but it keeps us all happy. And then we have this nice control group of people who are passionate enough about Solus that they've decided to support the project. Well, one, we're saying thanks by giving them early access to things, and two, they're displaying a keen interest in the project. They're more likely to find problems because they
Right.
actually really want to look. They're not just flying by or distro hopping. They want to support the project. So we benefit from that by finding lots of problems. So we have, what we call our supporters, our community, and that two-way relationship really helps us. So they'll be getting an ISO later on this week with, as Josh has put it, these badass improvements. So that'll go out later this week, and probably the end of next week, I'm going to conveniently fall over, stepping away from my computer, at which time an ISO will flip up in the air and land on the internet somewhere leaked. It would be a complete accident. You just can't stop these things. But
Right.
100% possible that an ISO will fall out of my pocket in the general direction of the internet.
And there may or may not be some accidental screenshot taken of a silly terminal, just
I wouldn't do that.
no, who would do that and talk about that regarding an ISO? That's just nuts, right?
That's just no class at all.
Yeah, those people, jeez. All right, so moving on to questions, Levi, do you have any questions that you would like to pose for us?
I did have one actually about I know all the stateless talk that's been going on, like in the last session of this week's in Solus. What I was curious about though is if we have a current install going on right now, and then the upgrades that make it stateless in the future, will our etc folder eventually empty out, or would it be better to do a fresh install at 2.0 at that point?
So your etc folder will only empty out if your configuration hasn't changed, which is kind of the whole point. So with the whole stateless concept, which totally hijacked from Clear Linux, love stealing stuff from those guys and applying it to desktop. Um, Technically also one of those guys, but that's at work and separate. But clear inspiration. There's cool stuff to be taken. I'm gonna take it. So the way it works with stateless is forget about your local data. Think about your configuration. Things down in etc, we would class that as system-wide configuration. So if a package ships that just means that package is on a lot of drugs because it shouldn't have them. But I mean, that's kind of the way things have been for a long time. We said these things are configuration, but then you change them, then you have to do merges on things when you do updates. It's kind of nasty. So with the stateless changes, what we're doing is we no longer ship things in etc. So we do for a lot of packages already. A lot of them have been changed, but gradually we're shipping less things in there. So what will happen is those files instead be shipped in a new folder, or we'll just make that thing sane by default, or not have configuration, something sensible. So if you already have a file in etc, if you've not changed it, your version stays there, because that's something that's configurable, right? So if you have a file in etc, that will be used instead of the default file that we ship. So the idea is once we're completely stateless, if you have no files in etc or var or anything like that, you're using the stock system configuration. Now the upside of that being, once we get to say Solus 2, when it's completely done, because there's some things we're not going to be able to do in Solus 1, that just requires a slight re-architecture. Once we get to Solus 2, if you had all these files in etc and you said, crap, like my system's whatever, I did something and I can't fix it, you just be able to like remove all of those files and start again. You just go back to the system configuration. So you then have the concept of a factory reset built into the system, and you can go back to that same default.
I think it would be a neat idea to, if actually somewhere in maybe Raven or somewhere, have a button that'll automatically clear out the folder for you to just do a quick and easy factory reset.
I mean, in Raven itself,
But it doesn't have to be in Raven, just
yeah.
somewhere have an option for that, or like an application that might launch a script or something.
Yeah, I mean, at some stage we're going to have kind of a more unified settings as opposed to hijacking GNOME stuff and trying to get away with it, which is kind of what we're doing at the moment. Like we have GNOME control center.
It's kind of bitten us a few times, isn't that right?
Yeah. I mean, like you can't knock it. Come on, the GNOME Control Center. The hint is in the name. Yeah, they
Right.
have GNOME Shell. They have GNOME Control Center. These things are for them. We just happen to misappropriate them. So
Right.
sometimes we'll have our own kind of unified settings manager, maybe based on our code base, maybe not. But things like that should probably take precedence in there because Solus 2, we're going to be looking at things like backups and snapshots and all the cool juicy buzzwords that people tend to like. So, as well as having like a recovery operating system on disk that's installed at the same time, just so if anything ever did go wrong, you can roll back things and fix them. Kind of like when you have Windows on a laptop and you have a diagnostic system on there. Exact same concept.
Yeah, like they roll back to like safe mode, or they have a recovery partition on there
Right.
usually.
So we'd have a diagnostic system that actually did something, as opposed to reinstalled. It would actually help you out. So that's the kind of way we're going for Solus 2. I.e., what helps the consumer.
It's a good way to do it.
And with that, there does not appear to be any other questions. So that's kind of convenient because it keeps it at a nice short length. So you can join us on the first and third Sunday of every month, barring natural disasters, world wars, IKEA sleeping in, etc., at 9 a.m. UTC. The next Sundays with Solus will be on the 1st of May as well, and it's one of those months that is, as Ike put it, like
It's a mutant. It's got 5 Sundays.
Yeah, 5 Sundays. It's just
What the hell is that about?
so we won't be having 3 different Sundays with Solus on that one. It will just still be the 1st and 3rd. We're not going we're not going
we're not
the
getting
1st,
out of
3rd, and 5th. No.
We're not getting out of it. We got questions now.
Uh-oh. When will wine get updated/fixed? All right, well, wine is a work in progress, so as such, it will get updated when we need to update it. So, I don't know.
So the real question here is when will it get fixed? Because the
Right.
wine package we have right now is it's basically saying, yeah, we have wine and we've expressed an interest to make it valuable at some point. Right
Right.
now, it's kind of a validation thing. Should it be in the main Shannon repo? Probably not. To be fair with you, it probably should never have gone into the Shannon repo because it was never complete. I mean, I'll accept that. The main thing blocking wine is, again, it's a case of it needs to be able to run 32-bit and 64-bit programs, mainly because that's kind of what you do in Windows. You have this split between 32-bit and 64-bit programs. As you can imagine, the thing that would block that is our lack of 32-bit libraries. However, the new Y package landed, and one of the intents with Y package was to make it extremely flexible and powerful, as well as dealing with things like 32-bit libraries. So now that's all in. We have a bunch more 32-bit libraries. The current things that we're aiming for, Steam, Skype, TeamViewer, Wine, they're all basically sharing a common set of libraries they all need. So as and when those land, we can then enable more things in the Wine package. Now, once that's all done, Wine will be lovely and awesome and actually usable. We're then going to be moving to Wine staging, which means we get lots of lovely patches from upstream to enable things like GTK3 integration. So your Windows applications will look like your Linux applications. And that's kind of where we eventually want to go with it. Probably going to be this weekend before we have enough in there to make a usable wine build. Because
Right.
it's this week that all the 32-bit libraries are now landing down with all the optimizations coming through, all the changes to the display stack. Now everything is culminating. That is the right word, right?
I think so. I
It
think that's
sounded
how
awesome.
English
It
works.
sounded awesome, right? We'll use that word. But once we get to the end of the week, we'll have enough libraries in place that we can actually then go to Wine and build it with everything it needs. And then we'll have a fully working Wine. So let's say Saturday or Sunday, Wine will be in a lot better shape than it is now. Because now it does suck. And I apologize for that. And I'm also not sure why I'm making hand gestures. Nobody can see me.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us, and we will see you on the 1st of May. Bye.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
I should probably press stop progress. But before I do that, I'm just going to leave a really, really, really innocent hint before we go. You should really join on the 15th of May. Dun, dun, dun.